Hey guys, it is Mr. Dave with the RayKitty Creation Workshop, and you are joining us for the RayKitty Science Project. I'm so happy to have you here for part 2 of our standing wave kind of series there. We are going to be continuing what we were talking about on the last episode. So hopefully you caught the last episode. If not, you can backtrack and you can catch it on YouTube or things like that. But that one there, we talked about standing waves. I will kind of give you a quick re-up on that one. Standing waves are waves that are still, okay? Now you say, what do you mean they're still? Well, they're moving, but they're not traveling, okay? So when you think about the ocean, those are traveling waves. When I talk about sound is normally a traveling wave, but when we're making it, it's a traveling wave that is generated by a standing wave. Now my voice, right? My voice is radiating all over the place. It's bouncing off the walls. It's getting in my ear hole. It's moving around. But my vocal cords, okay, if you put your hand on your throat very gently there and you make some sounds, you can feel that vibration there. Your vocal cords generate a standing wave, okay? So they're moving like this, okay? But what happens is that standing wave, as it is moving up and down, it generates a ripple. Just like when you throw a little rock into the pond and you see those ripples come out, it is generating a ripple. So our last one, we showed you some stuff with standing waves, and I promised that you could do it at home and you could make a fun contraption for very cheap. This is a super fun one. I really love this one. My daughter and I were playing with this one this morning, and we were shooting little laser beams all over the house. So for this one here, as far as safety, again, you do have rubber bands. You can pop yourself with a rubber band. You have scissors, standard safety with scissors. You do have lasers, okay? For this one, when I'm kind of explaining it to you, you can use the little Dollar Tree laser that you buy at, well, you know, Dollar Tree or wherever. Very inexpensive laser will work no problem. For my demonstration, I'm going to be using a little bit higher power, and that's just so it shows up a little better on the video. But everything I'm doing can be done with this little laser right here that costs $1.25. So this whole project here, you probably have most of the things around the house. If not, this one here, I have a little corner cut out of this one, and you'll see why in a minute. I'll hide it like it's a magic trick. Yeah, there's a corner, there's no corner. Yeah, but this is just a little mirror, okay, little plastic mirror. Now, it's very important that it's a plastic mirror. If not, what you can do is in the craft section, sometimes they'll have the little square or little round glass mirrors that you use for decorating things. Those will work also. But as you can see, I have a little bitty corner cut out of this thing here. I'll put my hand there so it's just not showing up on the black shirt there. But that's about the size that you'll want. It doesn't have to be precisely that size, but you'll want a small mirror, okay? I use this stuff here because you can actually cut it with scissors. You can purchase these at the dollar store or at any box store. They're very inexpensive, and you can usually buy like a 3-pack for $1 or $2, okay? So these are very inexpensive. As far as safety, if you are working with mirrors, these plastic ones, you'd have to work pretty hard to hurt yourself with, but you do have sharp edges there as far as corners. But you know, if you are working with glass mirrors, always be careful with the edges on that glass, okay? The other is balloons, common balloon safety, okay? And really, that's about all it takes. I'm going to be using my cellular telephone and this speaker here. But really, anything that you have that plays music will work. Now, one of the things that we will be doing is working with a frequency generator, which is going to generate specific frequencies, kind of like in our last one, where the frequency is how often something happens. This one will generate certain frequencies, and we'll want that for this demonstration, but you won't need it at home. You can just use a speaker, or you can use that thing in your throat like we talked about earlier, okay? So this is a fun one. Oh, the thing I forgot to say is this right here. This is a yardstick. Well, it's actually not. This is like a 1.5 foot stick. But whatever you whatever size stick you've got. If you've got something around the house, this one I picked up at an unnamed big box lumber store there, and you can get these for free. So that's the best price. So one of these rubber bands, I'm using popsicle sticks. You can use anything you've got around the house. And this right here, okay? This was a protein tub. You can use a jar, a plastic jar of any sort or size. A little bit larger is better. These are usually pretty easy to come by. You can also use the larger plastic ones. And I did cut the bottom out of this, and I did that before we started airing because that way that just takes a lot of unnecessary time. So that is really it for something that you're going to see is pretty darn cool. Okay, so, oh, I got two-sided tape. If your little mirrors aren't sticky, you use the two-sided tape. All right. So we're going to get started on building this thing, and then I will show you what it does, okay? So if you remember, in our last episode and very early on, we did that thing with the little cup where you go, ooh, and it makes the rice bounce around on it. This is going to start out with generally the same idea. I've got my balloon. I'm going to take and I am going to cut off the kind of the straight part of it there to where I just have a little balloon cup here. Okay, I'm going to put my balloon around the smaller edge of this one. Again, this isn't super important as far as size, but a thinner plastic and something about, as large as you can make work. Okay, you don't want to use a trash can, but one of these or a pickle jar. If you've got those plastic pickle jars, they work. They just smell like pickles. Okay, so I'm going to put my balloon over here, and then I'm going to put a rubber band on it because I want to make sure this one stays nice and tight. Now, I said the same thing last time, and these balloons really like on there. So what I made was a drum. Okay, and that is on purpose because what a drum does is it vibrates and it resonates. So I am going to put a rubber band around this just as a little extra holder honor there, which is a scientific term, which if you are one of my students, you know that means nothing at all. So what I have here is a rubber band holding on my balloon on here. Now you want that to be pretty tight. You don't want it saggy. You want it to be able to kind of make that bouncy point or that bouncy sound because we are going to have that thing vibrating. Okay. Now my mirror, with these plastic ones here, you really can cut them with scissors. You'll see a little bit of like fragmentation and cracking around the very edges, but that's not anything dangerous and that's not anything bad. So I just cut a little square out of my mirror. Okay. I just got shot with my own rubber band. So I've got, and my balloon came off. All right, so I'm going to put my balloon back on there. And this little square that I've got of this mirror, we're going to put on our balloon. So I'm going to put the balloon, after I was bragging on how well these balloons stayed on there, of course, then it comes off. So I'm going to put it on there a little further this time, and I'm going to double up my rubber band and see if I can get this thing to stay on there. Here we go. Now, hopefully, that won't shoot me in the arm. All right, so now, hopefully, our little guy is on there. Okay, now, I've got my little mirror. Okay, as I said, when you buy them at the craft store or when you buy them like for crafts, a lot of times the back is already adhesive. That's pretty handy. I don't have adhesive mirrors, and I wanted the point to be this is a lot of things that you have around the house. So I have two-sided tape. Now, you don't have to use two-sided tape either if you don't want. If you've got regular tape, you can do that weird thing where you wrap it around your fingers and stick it on there. But I've got double-sided tape, and I'm going to put my mirror on the tape. Okay, now I want to make sure that it's really stuck on there because I don't want any extra vibration. Okay, vibration is a standing wave. Okay, so I'm going to stick that on there, and I'm going to peel off the other side here, and I am going to put that in the center of my balloon. Okay, now I'm going to reach my hand through where I cut the hole, and I'm going to really make sure that's stuck on there because we want that to really stick. Now, is it exactly in the center? I did pretty darn good that time, but it doesn't have to be exactly in the center, but shoot toward the middle, and you want that in the middle, okay? Because what we have now is a reflector for our laser beam, okay? Now, with this one here, what we're going to do is we are now going to attach this to our stick, okay? And we want some distance between our reflector and our laser. Our laser is going to be on one side of our stick and our reflector is going to be on the other side. So when I put it on, I'm not going to want to put it way up here. I'm going to want to put it pretty far back. Now, if you're making these at home and you want to make it for like a permanent thing, which you really should because they're awesome, you can glue these on, you can screw them on, you can staple them on, whatever. But I wanted the point to be something you can make very quick and easy, so I'm using these rubber bands, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a bunch of these rubber bands over my bucket here, okay? And you want a bunch because you want it to be pretty stable on there. If it's moving around a bunch, you're going to end up having to recalibrate your laser a lot. So I'm putting these rubber bands around here, and then I'm going to slide them over my stick. So I think I put 4 so far. I'm going to go for 5, and we'll see how stable that makes it. So I ran these on here. I've got my stick, okay? And I'm going to pull these up because remember, you want it pretty close to the end. So I'm going to slide these up to where they're holding my stick on there, okay? And so after the first 2, if you slide those pretty far out, then I snapped one of my rubber bands. So if you slide them pretty far out, that'll make it pretty stable for your next rubber bands. And I'm going to put these ones on here. And as I said, really, if you're building this at home, you can glue this. You can hot glue works great. Just make sure if you're doing hot glue with the students, that everybody's nice and careful with that hot glue. Hot glue works great, but it's pretty fun to make one that you can make in not too much time. Okay, so now you can see I've got my bucket on a stick. Okay, so now I have a bucket on a stick. Now, what we're going to do with our bucket on a stick is we are going to attach our laser to this side here. Now, the reason I have my popsicle sticks is they are going to be shims, okay? Because our laser, and remember, as I said, you can use these little bitty lasers if you want, but we're going to use this one just for the demonstration today because it's a little bit brighter and you'll be able to see it a little bit better. But I'm going to take some popsicle sticks. Take 2 or 3 at first, and I'm going to do the same doubly up on my rubber bands, and I'm going to wrap them around the end here. Okay, I'm going to slide them down, and I'm going to put my popsicle sticks in there. Okay, so I got my popsicle sticks in there. Now, we can add more or less of them. One of the tricks is, if you're going to add more, add them on the bottom, because then you're not fighting those rubber bands every time. Okay, just a little trick that will make all the difference when you're trying to fandangle everything around. So what we're going to do is now we're going to strap our rubber band on, and we want our rubber band to hit our mirror. Okay, so I know that I'm going to want some more popsicle sticks than that. You can always slide them out, slide them back, and you can calibrate it once you have everything on there. Okay, now next we're going to take a rubber band and I am going to wrap it around my flashlight. Well, actually, I'm going to double it up, do the same thing, and I'm going to wrap it around my stick, and then I'm going to put my flashlight through there. Now, you can use more than one rubber band for this. Again, really all you need is stability. Okay, so we're going to start with that right there, and then I'll put another one on in just a second. But as you can see, those little shims hold my laser up at an angle, and we'll want to adjust it before we really strap it down. So let me show you what I'm doing here while I'm doing it. You can see that my laser shines way up here on my balloon. Okay, that's not going to work. We want that laser to hit, and we want it to be stable as it hits. So it takes a little bit of adjusting to do that, and we're also going to want something to hold our switch on. Okay, this one has the same type of button as those dollar store lasers. So I'm going to take a rubber band and I'm going to put it over the button. Okay, so now it's holding that button down. Okay, but it's hitting in the wrong spot. So this is important, and this is going to be the tricky part. It's not too tricky, but this is the part you want to pay attention to because you want to make sure things stay stable. Now, I'm going to take another rubber band. Okay, it really depends on where you're at. We can either tighten things up, we can loosen things. I can move these sticks, and if I move these sticks, it's going to bring me down. Okay, but it's not going to be as stable. Let's see where it's hitting now. It's hitting there, but as you can see, it kind of moves around pretty easy. So we're going to want to make sure that our laser is nice and stable. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to double up a rubber band, and I'm going to put it over the whole mechanism here, and I'm going to put it to where it's over where our popsicle sticks are, because that's going to give us a little stability, and now we're hitting that laser. As you can see, I can kind of move it a little bit even while it's in there, but I am dead center on that laser right now, and that's exactly where I want to be. Okay, so what we have now is a fun little contraption with a light on it. Yay! Okay, now the reason we want this reflector and the reason we want it on this vibrating surface and the reason we want this right here is because of resonance. Okay, when you play a guitar, if I were to plunk a little string like this, you don't hear too much, right? But when you put that string by a resonance chamber, we get a lot of sound. This is going to work the opposite. I'm going to pump sound into here, and it's going to make this vibrate, just like we did with those little cups, okay? When we had our cup and we, oh, then it made that sound through there. Now, for this to work, okay, you can get a more dramatic or bigger sound, or bigger visualization with distance, okay? So if I were to put my hand, let me move this way, and if I were to put my hand right here, okay, and we were to have the sound, we wouldn't see much movement because there's not much distance between here and here. Okay, just like when I'm moving my arm, okay, you'll see that I've got just a little bit of motion here, but with the same motion, I have a lot of motion here. Works like a lever. You can use this for talking a little bit about that physics and the math part. On the farther you go, the longer that lever, right? If you had the big enough lever, you could move the entire world. So, I've got my laser here, okay? And let's see, right now, it's shining. Let's see, if we could look at the wall over there. I'll see if I can get it. It is shining right there on the wall. Now, you guys can see that. I've got a nice little laser beam on the wall. Let me see if I can bring it down just a tad. There we go. Now, we have a nice laser beam on the wall over there. And as you can see, just a little bit of motion gives us a lot of movement on that laser over there. Okay? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to make sound, and it is going to cause that laser to move. Remember, I have my resonance chamber here. And so now I'm going to yell into this side of the my empty bottle. Okay? Ready? Now, you can see how the different sounds had different shapes, just like when we were doing with our little vibrating pad there. It's the same here. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make different frequencies that will affect that. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit noisy, so I won't be doing much chatting, but you'll just watch it over there and you'll see how different sounds are going to generate different frequencies. Okay, so I'm going to start with a pretty low frequency and then I'll go up as I go. Okay, so let's see if I can turn it. So this is 13 hertz. Not a lot. Now, you'll see when I get into this range here, we're going to start getting into shapes that show up on there. Now I'm moving it in and out. When I move it closer, it gets larger. So what I'm doing now is I'm moving it farther in and farther out, changing the size of those waves, and so that gives us different shapes. The farther out I am, the smaller it is, because there's less volume in there. Now as I slow down the pitch, do you see how it actually turns? This is going from 200 hertz up to 230, and we can actually watch that, that vibrate and that turn as it's going. Now when I bring it down, we get almost nothing as we're in there. So we're going to go, I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. We don't need all that volume. And then I'm going to go up real high or higher, and we'll see a different shape. And you could see it dancing around as it was doing those shapes. Now, you may not have a frequency generator, and what's a little more fun anyway is just to do it with music. Now, I did get some royalty-free music, so these are not songs that you will recognize it or anything like that, but then when we have it on the internet, then there's nothing with copyright or anything like that. So, I've got some songs, and we're actually going to watch the songs on here, and we can see those shapes change as our music is playing, okay? So you can do this at home with any speaker toward the end of it. You can sing in there if you've got a better voice than me. You really don't want to hear me sing, but you can sing into it. You can use it for a little visualizer for your music. If you're as old as me, you used to have Winamp. You know you had Winamp, and you know what it does to the llama. But Winamp would have those visualizers, okay? So we're going to play some music through here, and we're going to see what happens with our sounds. So I'm going to see if I can find one here with a little bit more of the lower end on the, oh, there we go. There we go. what you could see there was the different sounds are going to give you all those different shapes. You can play around. As I said, the ones that I did there were, just some songs no one's ever heard before. But when you play your favorite song and then you see all the shapes bouncing on the wall, it can really kind of just add a fun something to it. Now, one more time, this will just be my voice so you can see a nice pure, clear one. I'm going to just go through different pitches. And if you're listening, I don't know if you picked that up on the mic, but like some of those are resonating with this little box here. So you can really see different shapes based on the sound. It's the same as you saw those little patterns on the plate in our last episode. This is something, again, you can make very cheap, very easy. If you're playing with your friends and you want to play some music in your bedroom and then shine little things all over the ceiling, this is a fun one for doing that. And this is just a great thing to make. And you can talk about the science of standing waves. Okay, so these are standing waves. The sound traveling in there is a traveling wave. And then when it bounces off of this little guy here, we end up with a standing wave because this wave isn't going anywhere. It's just bouncing back and forth where it is. So a traveling wave and a standing wave are very related, but they are very different. Okay. Again, this is something that you can make for $5-10 if you want to get a fancy laser pointer, if you want to get different color lasers, that's all fun. But really, one of these little guys will do just as good as this. If you're shining on a nice white, bright surface, then you'll see a lot more of that light on there. You do it in a nice dark room, you're going to really be able to make a fun little party with what you've got here. Okay, all right, so that is it for this one here. I am Mr. Dave. As we end everything, don't forget that science shows you matter.